Betty are present. Do we have Betty on Zoom? We can't see her yet, and so Betty is here as well. Are there any changes to today's agenda? If not, a motion would be in order to approve it. Anne? So moved. Do I have a second? Jim? All in favor? Raise your hand. Can't see Betty yet?
There she is.
I'm sure
Have I
that's a
showed
10
up
vote.
yet?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Are you okay with
I'm
approving the
voting
agenda?
yes.
Thank you. All right, in that case, I will welcome Natalie Clark and the Career and Technical Student Organizations, CTSOs. Welcome.
Chair, state members of Board of Education, Commissioner Watson, thank you for having the Kansas Career and Technical Student Organizations with you. Is that better? Okay. I'm Natalie Clark, as you said, Assistant Director with Career and Technical Education and Individual Plans of Study. Today, we would like to share with you about career and technical education, specifically career and technical student organizations. Sometimes we refer to those as CTSOs, and how they're working in Kansas. At the end of the 2023 school year, we had 24,856 members in each of our 8 supported career and technical student organizations. So if we think about how career and technical education is working for Kansas, research shows that students who are members of a career and technical student organization demonstrate higher levels of academic engagement, motivation, civic engagement, career self-efficacy, and employability skills. And according to the National Research Center for Career and Technical Education, participating in leadership and professional development activities in CTSO raises a student's educational aspirations. So we'd now like to share with you how career and technical education is working across Kansas. We have CTSO state leaders in the room. We have 8 CTSOs due to inclement weather. Some of those schools were closed, so they couldn't be with us today. But we certainly have 3 students representing organizations who are going to share remarks on how the CTSO that they're a member of has impacted them personally. And we'll also have the opportunity to hear from our CTE educational program consultants in the different areas. They serve as liaisons to these student organizations, and so they will be sharing a little bit about the organization that's not with us here today. So thank you for having us.
Hello, I'm Kathy Camarina. I'm an education program consultant for business management and entrepreneurship, finance, marketing, and government and public administration. So this morning I will be talking to you on behalf of the 3 CTSOs that are associated primarily with business, marketing, and finance. The first one is Business Professionals of America, known as BPA. The vision of BPA is to be an innovator in career and technical education, providing members with opportunities for growth through education, competition, community service, and personal development. The purposes of BPA are many, including to provide members opportunities in leadership and development, to unite in a common professional bond without regard to race, creed, sex, or national origin of students enrolled in classes with business employment as their objective, to develop leadership abilities through participation in career and technical education, civic, recreational, and social activities, to create enthusiasm for learning, to promote high standards in workmanship, ethics, and scholarship, to develop the ability of students to plan together, organize, and carry out worthy activities and projects through the use of democratic processes, and to foster an understanding of the functions of labor, entrepreneurial, and management organizations. BPA held a fall leadership conference in September where the state officers provided sessions to help current BPA members prepare for competitions and careers. BPA will hold its state competition February 15th through 17th in Wichita, And at that competition, students can compete in various events such as finance, business management, digital communication, and marketing. Students who qualify for the national competition may attend that this summer of 2024. In Kansas, BPA currently has 635 members and 28 chapters, and these numbers are an increase over previous years, so they express that they are very excited about the increase in their membership. Just go to the next one. Okay. Next is Kansas DECA, and unfortunately, they are not able to attend today either. But this is another organization that's primarily for students in business management, marketing, and finance, although there is some crossover with other pathways, which you'll see in most CTSOs. The vision of DECA is to prepare emerging leaders and entrepreneurs for careers in marketing, finance, hospitality, and management in high schools and colleges around the globe. For the 22-23 school year, the membership in DECA nationally has returned to pre-pandemic levels, which I think is something that all CTSOs had to, a challenge for all of them, because during COVID years, students were not participating as much because it's not as much fun to do things virtually as it is to do them in person. So the membership has rebounded. Currently, for this school year in Kansas, 1,239 students are members of DECA. DECA is holding its state competition March 3rd through 5th in Manhattan. Students compete in events such as business administration, entrepreneurship, finance, hospitality, marketing, and personal financial literacy. At this time, I would like to share remarks from Mahathi Reddy, who is currently serving as Kansas DECA state president and was unable to attend today due to weather. She says, I joined DECA my freshman year of high school, and even with COVID making the experience suboptimal, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. As a senior now, there are 3 primary things I have learned: leadership, competition, and professionalism. DECA cultivates a competitive environment that urges kids to practice professionalism. For us, it gives us the opportunity to practice skills that we can use in the real world early on. I've gained so many interview skills and have had the opportunity to pursue further learning. The things I've been able to do would not have been possible without being a part of DECA, and I am so grateful to be able to represent the students within it. DECA gives us all the chance to pursue excellence and truly cultivate the skills we can use to find success. I genuinely believe that our generation has the ability to create and innovate in ways that haven't been seen before, and I've seen firsthand the impact it has had on people. Me personally, before high school, I never would have had the courage to represent over 1,000 of my peers, but the things this organization stands for and the people within it have made me feel capable of anything. I aspire to share that with the students I represent and continue to share it as I graduate and beyond. While I am not able to join you today, my words have been and will always be that CTSOs create a generation of leaders, thinkers, movers, and builders that will change the world. Thank you all so much. It has been an honor speaking to all of you. Okay. Finally, FBLA, Future Business Leaders of America, is the 3rd student organization primarily for students in business pathways. The vision of FBLA is to inspire and prepare students to become community-minded business leaders in a global society through relevant career preparation and leadership experiences. Kansas schools currently have 84 FBLA chapters with 2,298 members. FBLA will hold its state competition April 3rd through 5th in Topeka, and students compete in events ranging from accounting, broadcast journalism, computer game programming, database design, public speaking, to website coding and development. At this time, I will share remarks from Bailey Langley, senior at Pleasant Ridge High School and current student president of Kansas FBLA. She says, I joined FBLA as a scared freshman, not knowing what to expect. Little did I know that this was the best decision I could have made for myself. For me, FBLA has been instrumental in shaping my leadership skills. From the beginning in my local chapter, I was given countless opportunities to take on responsibilities, organize events, and lead my peers. These experiences have not only enhanced my ability to manage and inspire others, but also have instilled in me a sense of confidence and determination. FBLA has been my training ground for leadership, teaching me the importance of effective communication, strategic planning, and collaborative decision making. Looking beyond enhancing my leadership skills, FBLA has a competitive aspect that has challenged me to push beyond my boundaries and strive for excellence. Participating in various competitions has helped my analytical and problem solving skills. FBLA's competitive events have taught me the importance of innovation and adaptability in the ever changing business world. The knowledge and practical insights gained through these events have undoubtedly given me a competitive edge and a deeper understanding of what the world has to offer for young people. Thank you. FCCA.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ava Gustin from Mission Valley High School, and I'm representing Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America, or FCCLA. We are the student-led organization that is primarily focused on family and is in family and consumer science classrooms. Our career pathways include human services, in visual arts and design, as well as teaching and training and hospitality and tourism. We have many options for members to get involved in competitive events as they learn about culinary as well as public speaking and early childhood. So I know there are many stats that I could share about FCCLA, but I kind of just want to share my personal story as a student and how FCCLA has impacted me. Both of my older sisters were in FCCLA, and as a student in elementary school, I knew FCCLA members as the fun people who brought us snacks or did games with us or all community service projects. But I never really thought that I could be a part of it. I kind of just knew it was something my sisters did. So my freshman year, I was like, sure, I'll join and try it. But it gave me so much more than just an extra club. It kind of gave me more of an identity in high school. And I never thought that as an FCCLA member that I could run for a state office or participate in a competitive event because I just didn't have that confidence in myself. And I thought that it was something that other people did and that I couldn't do. And FCCLA gave me the confidence to be able to run for a chapter office, which built onto a peer education and then built onto state office. So I think there's a lot of building that students can learn in FCCLA. In addition, it has given me family, which I know is kind of cliche as we are the family organization. We're the only ones focused on family, but I know many students across Kansas, me especially, high school is not the easiest time of your life to kind of go through things and grow up and learn what your future is going to be. So I've always struggled in high school to have a group and to feel welcomed and acknowledged, and the connections I've made in FCCLA and the people that I've been surrounded by have given me that family that I feel like is always there for me. And that has helped build my confidence to know that if something goes wrong, my FCCLA members, whether that's on the chapter, state, or even national level, they're always here for me. And they're such a welcoming group and they're so inclusive to anybody who would ever need help. So I'm just so glad that I've joined an organization that gives me that feeling of family and also teaches me so much for my future career. Through family and consumer science courses, I've learned everything from when bread goes moldy to how to talk in front of people, as well as how to interact with young children and the horror stories from our kitchens that you guys would be so surprised to hear are great learning experiences for our students because they know to never, vacuum an egg or put flour on a burning fire or anything like that. They know how to be good employees and educators in the future. So I'm so thankful for FCCLA for giving that to me, and I know that our members are going to continue to thrive with our upcoming state leadership conference and national conferences. It gives them great opportunities to get involved, and I'm so thankful for everyone supporting career and technical student organizations, because I know high school would have been a lot harder for me had I not had FCCLA. So thank you.
Good morning. I'm Guy Shoulders. I'm the Agriculture Program Consultant for KSDE, and I serve as the State FFA Advisor. Our State FFA officers, 4 of which are in Australia right now on an international agricultural leadership exchange program, weren't be able to make it today because of that, and the other ones that we had just couldn't make it for the inclement weather. So unfortunately, you get to hear from me instead of the outstanding students that you would have preferred to hear, I promise you. FFA is a national organization, and since really beginning of time with agriculture education, it has been a very important component of what we call the 3-component model for agricultural education programs. And the success of those programs, of agriculture education programs, are dependent on that adherence to that 3-circle model. Those 3 components of that model are the hands-on instruction that we have in the classroom, the laboratories, in the fields and the farms, the work-based learning component that we have built into our system and have had built into our system since the early years of agriculture education. We call it the Supervised Agricultural Experience Program. And the last one, of course, is the FFA, our National Student Organization. The FFA's mission statement is to develop premier leadership, personal growth, and career success through agriculture education. That's the mission statement of National FFA. FFA is the oldest CTSO with nearly 100 years of experience. It's continued to serve as a model for other CTSOs and other youth organizations as well. Not only is it the oldest CTSO, is it the largest CTSO. Right now, currently, we have 945,988 members nationwide. That's about a 30% increase over the last 6 years. We have 9,163 chapters nationwide in all 50 states and Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Around 75,000 members each year attend the National Convention in Indianapolis. In Kansas, Kansas was the 16th state chartered with the National FFA Association, was established in 1929. Currently, we have over 230 chapters, over 300 agricultural education instructors, and we are representative in all but 2 of Kansas's 105 counties. This year, we should eclipse the 13,000 member mark statewide for the first time in history. We've broken records for the last 3 years coming out of COVID for membership. Our state officers, as I said, were elected in June. They go through some training right off the bat, attend a National Leadership Training Conference in Washington, D.C., put on 3 chapter leadership development conferences across the state in the summertime, and then have their district officer leadership training where they train the district officers that we have in each of our 7 districts. Following that up, they had National FFA Convention, as I said, is in the fall and attended by 75,000 members nationwide. We had a great delegation from Kansas attending this year and had a lot of success at National FFA Convention, including members of our career development teams getting recognized in the top 10 in several events. We had a top 4 finisher in the Prepared Public Speaking Contest, which is viewed by many as the toughest public speaking contest for youth organizations anywhere. We had 4 national finalists and a national winner in the Agricultural Proficiency Award area. Those are the recognition program for our work-based learning experience, or the SAE that we have. We had 4 chapters recognized as part of a National Chapter Award program. And this is a really, I think, is a very cool thing, and I wanted to share with you just briefly about this. Every fall, FFA members, first-year FFA members, learn the FFA Creed. The FFA Creed is a 5-paragraph essay that was penned by a native Kansan and adopted as the official FFA Creed in the 30s, and has been recited by FFA members, first-year FFA members ever since. And the FFA Creed competition at National FFA has been conducted for a number of years, since the 30s. But this year, the first year ever, they held as a invitational contest at the national level, a Spanish Creed speaking contest. And Kansas had the first ever national Creed speaking winner. A young lady from Uniontown was our national winner in the first ever Spanish Creed speaking contest. So I thought that was pretty cool. Last couple of notes that I'd say about our success. Last year, in the scholarship program that National FFA awards over $1 million annually to FFA members. Last year, we had over 80 members receive over $170,000 in scholarship from the National FFA. And recently, this just happened last week or two, we received notice that that we had 28 members receive grants from the National FFA for development of their work-based learning experience, their SAE. This is an entrepreneurial grant that they will have to develop their SAE. And an additional 27 members were selected to receive $500 from state sponsors for that award program. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Oh. Good morning. I'm Erin Kennett, and I'm the Health and Bioscience Consultant here at KSDE. I'm going to represent HOSA on behalf of the State Advisor Tina Gruz-Gerritsen and Student Body President Emma Eichsten from Frontenac High School. I'm going to begin by sharing Emma's statement, her impact statement, followed by some data points from Tina. HOSA affects everyone in different ways. People join HOSA to further their career exploration, improve life skills, or make global connections. But for me, HOSA has been the opportunity to uniquely expand my leadership horizons. My name is Emma Eichsten. I am the president of Kansas HOSA this year. Without HOSA, I would not have the diverse relationships I have across the state of Kansas and the world. Without HOSA, I would not have a more intricate understanding of and respect for democracy as I represented Kansas at the international level, choosing our next young leaders. Without HOSA, I would not have real-world experiences beyond my years, life like traveling alone, networking with students and health professionals alike, and of course, speaking in front of highly respected leaders in education like you all. CTSOs are incredibly important to the high school experience. They impact not only the career we pursue, but the path with which we pursue it. HOSA especially emphasizes pipelining students into highly sought-after occupations. Future nurses, doctors, teachers, veterinarians, and military professionals are members of our organization. And are critical to the future of health in the state of Kansas and beyond. HOSA has shaped my time in high school in many ways that I couldn't have imagined. As a young freshman, I would be terrified to raise my hand in class, let alone stand in front of my peers and adults and speak about my HOSA experience. HOSA is unlike any organization I have ever been part of. It takes students and builds servant leaders. It takes dreamers and catapults their dreams into realities. It takes our current health system and makes it better. We make the future of healthcare better. Now, all I have to say is thank you. Thank you for your continued support of HOSA, our future health professionals. I'd also like to share a few notes from Tina, the state advisor. HOSA is a career and technical student organization for future healthcare professionals. HOSA does not stand, the letters do not stand for anything. It is a branding. Their core values are learn, lead, serve, and innovate. Some of the examples where they perform these tasks are preparing students for the workforce through career fairs, professional interactions, guest speakers, panels, and then also leading at their local chapters, as well as applying for state offices. They have leadership luncheons, network, and the last one was in Washington, D.C. just recently. They also serve the community through programs like Helping Hands and Host a Star programs, which were created this year by their state officers. And they are able to gain recognition for those community services and local events and blood drives. One aspect of being in HOSA are competitions, and these events provide opportunities for students to learn about the career through career competitions and practice those leadership skills through public speaking and serving others. Some data points from Tina is that HOSA currently has 53 chapters across Kansas with 1,074 members, and that is the highest number yet. HOSA has been in existence since 1980, and next year will be HOSA's 45th anniversary. HOSA has experienced rapid growth since post-COVID. Beyond an increase in members, their pre-conference attendees pre-COVID were around 250 to 300 attendees. This year, they're expected to have 630 more. And next year, they're expected to grow to around 800. So through Emma's letter and Tina's bullet points, I hope I have done HOSA justice in providing how it offers real life experiences to students, networking, and enriches students' high school experiences. Thank you for supporting HOSA.
Hello, my name is Grace Rourke. I'm from Labette County High School and the Skills USA president. Thank you for allowing us to come and speak on behalf of the Career Technical Student Organization. Oh,
You're fine. I'm making it worse. There we go.
Thank you for allowing us to come and speak on behalf of the Career Technical Student Organization. It is my pleasure to stand before you today and talk about Skills USA and how it has impacted my journey while in school. I was a quiet, shy kid who always stayed in my own little corner. During my freshman year, as I said in my local Skills USA chapter meeting, I loved what I saw. I knew that I would want to be part of something in this organization, but I didn't know how to get started or how to get involved. I talked to my health science teacher, and she encouraged me to enroll as a member. Being my first year in Skills USA, I wanted to volunteer working on the courtesy court team during the Kansas State Championship Conference, which would be setting up the competition floor that would host 85 skilled competitions. Meeting and working alongside our business industry partners is an experience I'll never forget. Seeing what actually goes on behind the scenes of a large competition and conference was eye-opening and a lot of work. The next year, I signed to be a local officer, which led to another door opening for me being able to run as a district officer, so I did. I've never regretted the decision I made, because as time evolved, I noticed how I was coming out of my shell. I was more active, and I found myself talking more. As time went on, another opportunity to run as a state officer occurs. And again, my teacher encouraged me to take the next step. I thought about it for a few minutes and decided if the door is open, why not walk through it? To my surprise, I was elected to serve as the Skills USA state reporter last year. I experienced standing before large crowds, which were my peers, and on stage. It has given me the confidence to push forward and take control of my future, pushing myself out of my comfort zone. Today, I stand before you as the Skills USA president, not scared to speak in front of you, but to embrace the moment I can make an impact with my voice in support of the Career Technical Student Organization. Skills USA has become a family I've never had, and has given me the opportunity to shine as a student. I have made many friends through this organization, friends I can dream and grow with because of Skills USA. This opportunity has given me the focus and drive to do better. It has given me a bigger personality than I've ever dreamed. I stand before you today because I took an opportunity to be part of something bigger than myself, an organization that is nationally 400,000 members strong. Please continue supporting career technical student organizations that give students like myself an opportunity to excel. Thank you again for allowing us to come and share about our impact our organization has on individual students.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jace Quirin. I'm the state president of TSA, and I'm a senior at Parsons High School. So today the prompt that we received was how your CTSO organization has impacted you personally. And I feel like this is a great question in regards to TSA because of the fact that TSA is all about experiences that you've gained through the organization. For example, this is my 4th time attending this conference today. I have been the state president of TSA for the past 2 years, and I was the state secretary my first 2 years. And because of that, I've been able to experience a lot of different things these past 4 years of high school being a state officer. The first thing I was able to experience was how to navigate a state conference in the time of COVID. And that is something that I feel like, as well as you guys, is something that is important to learn. And we've had to figure out how to go online and how to do things a little bit differently. So that is one of my, I'd say, favorite experiences, just being able to adapt a challenge and overcome. As far as the big picture goes, TSA is all about experiences in the sense of preparing people for the future. There's a bunch of different competitions that you can choose to compete in TSA. Those can range from fashion design, debate, coding, and I feel like that's something that sets TSA apart from all the other organizations, is the fact that there's such a wide range of competitions you can compete in, and it's not just specifically technology things on computers. Another thing that we gain from TSA is the resume builder. Events that I've gone to like this one today is something that I can put on my resume for the rest of my life whenever I'm applying for jobs, looking for internships. The political field is a field I want to go into today, so this also allows me to build relationships with the people in the field that I'm going to want to pursue, as well as any other competitions and judges that you will find in a TSA standing that is someone who is experienced in the certain field. Lastly, this has opened opportunities for me and many high schoolers that I don't get to that people don't get to experience. This past year, I went to Louisville, Kentucky for the national conference. The year before, it was in Tennessee. So just getting to travel and experience these different things as state presidents, that is something that a lot of students don't get that we are extremely grateful for. So with that being said, if you have any questions for me or any of us, we would love to answer them.
Thank you all, and thanks to everyone who stood in for those that couldn't be there. I'm sad for all of those students that, the snow disrupted a lot this week, so that's unfortunate. Board members, happy to entertain any questions, and I will start with Betty.
Okay, had to take a second here to navigate. And it's actually not a question. I just simply want to thank those presenters. Grace brought a point out that I think resonated so well with me when she made the statement of, I didn't know how to become involved. And I just want to thank you all for reminding us the importance of an anchor in a student's life. It does give me pause to think about those ways that we can help and reach other students learn how to become involved. This has obviously made such a significant difference in the lives of all of the students. And I thank you all for reminding us of the importance and the value that having an anchor and being involved can serve and promote the success of students. So, again, thank you.
Anne.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, guys. I've just been a huge fan of career and tech ed. I think it was almost 30 years ago. I was a keynote speaker at the state FCCLA convention and been a big fan, and I did some workshops at the HOSA state convention. And at the time, I was a cable repair foreman at Southwestern Bell, and I knew that, we were not going to have the pipeline full to get, future techs out there. So just been a big fan. Now, some people will say that when we emphasize career paths and we talk about careers in high school, we're letting businesses run the schools and kids don't need to think about that stuff until they get out of high school. So I'd like to hear from you guys if you think it's important that kids get career experience while they're in high school.
I can take it. So I think it's extremely important that kids get career experience while they're in high school, because it's just the sense that when it's kind of on the job learning, it's kind of hands-on learning. It's something that once you get experience to it earlier in life, I feel like that sets you up better for whenever you get out into the real world and you already have those experiences. So you're not learning. You're at that point, you're able to do and be a more impactful member of society.
I also agree that learning about careers in high school is very vital for all of our students. I know in FCCLA specifically, we have a lot of jobs that students might not think about as a traditional pathway for them, especially within our hospitality and tourism pathway and visual arts and design. So we are able to educate students on how they can become hotel operators as well as fashion designers, cosmetologists, and restaurant owners. And that really helps them because that's something that maybe isn't pushed as much in high school. So that shows them that if they have a passion, they can go for it, which I believe in turn motivates them in high school to do what they need to do to be able to pursue their ideal career.
I also think it's great for the students, especially because like you have some students that will go into after high school, they'll go to college, and they'll go for a career that they think that's what they want to do, and then they decide future on that that's not a career that they're interested in. And so I think in high school, when you get the opportunity to already look at those careers and get an idea and work with them, you're not gonna, like, I don't want to say waste time in college, but it's easier to kind of know what you kind of want to do, and you know what you're not a big huge fan of. So I think that helps the students.
Very good. Well, thank you guys for coming today. I think if it had been around, I'd have been in TSA. I was a total nerd in high school. So anyway, so happy to see you guys here, and thank you.
I think Ann just called you nerds, but these days that's a good thing. We'll go to Kathy.
I'm wondering if you have, without using names, a particular person or two in mind, other students, that you feel like you've impacted being in your, as an officer.
I personally, especially like our local officer team, I think I think I've helped impact them and let them know that it's not that scary to get up on stage in front of your local students, like our local chapter meetings. They were scared their first meeting, and I think just like us state officers being able to help them and talk them through it, I think helps a lot with them.
I feel like that I have helped students specifically that are more introverted in FCCLA. I think a lot of students see state officers on stage and think that we are 100% energy all the time. And that's something that really intimidated me as a student, being more introverted and more of a thinker. I wasn't for sure that I could be a state officer because I thought I didn't talk enough or didn't have the skills to be able to do so. So I feel like through these organizations, we're showing students that whatever background they come from, whatever type of personality they have, they can thrive in our organizations and still be a part and possess a leadership role, because it takes all kinds to make an officer team work and to make our organizations thrive.
So I like this question because I feel like that's kind of our jobs as student leaders, is to impact other people. But I also feel like, in a sense, that other people in the organization who are simply not even chapter officers, just simple members, have also impacted me. So I feel like that's something that we can do, is that not only can we teach people, but we can also learn from people of what we need to do better and how we can change as a state officer and help the organization as a whole.
Jim Porter.
This is we do this every year, and this is one of my favorite times because we see people like you who are obviously very competent in what you do and present yourself extremely well. But most of the time, and not just a couple of you today, but they talk about when I was a freshman, I was scared. I didn't have a family. And I really don't have a question, but I want to talk about the fact that you you know, I admire the fact that you've grown, that you recognize that you've grown, and you're helping other people grow. I have a concern, and that's to Natalie. Uh, and I don't expect an answer right now, but we see all sorts of organizations so that, you know, we have a place for people that are involved in agriculture, we have a place for people that are involved in health, we have a place for people that are involved in technology, we have a place for people that are involved in family-related things, we have a place for people related in business, but we don't see people related in what we actually are here primarily to do. And there is an organization, and I've been talking about, this is my 9th year, on the 10th maybe, I don't know, I can't count that high. I was a musician, I can only count to 4. But there's some barrier that keeps education rising from being on this, and I'd like for us to investigate what that barrier is, because I'd like to see 9 groups before I either expire or get off this board.
Well, thank you for your comment, Jim. Do you want to share about teaching and training?
Sure.
Sure.
So in FCCLA, we have a lot of opportunities for students to go into education. One of our biggest education fields, as being with family and consumer sciences, we really encourage students to become family and consumer science educators, as that is something that we have seen a shortage of within chapters across our state. Our advisors are really who keep us going and who help us a lot. So we encourage students to do that. We have different STAR events, which are competitive events that help. One of them is called FCS education, which is where you make up a lesson plan like you're a family and consumer science educator. We also have teach and train, which is where you teach a subject to younger elementary students or students and help them develop those skills. So we are really encouraging the education field, whether that be at an administration level or as an actual teacher. We also have focus on children, which is a big part of our organization. We're really inspired to help early childhood educators as well. I know through community service in FCCLA, I've gained a lot of experience during parent-teacher conferences. We help watch teachers' kids while they're doing conferences, and that has given me insight into students, as well as we really believe in helping our teachers, and we know that they are who keep us going, and we wouldn't be here without all of our teachers. So that's something we really try to promote in FCCLA.
I believe TSA also does a good job of promoting education. We have an event called Future Tech Teacher, and that's kind of like what she just said. It's about making a lesson plan and actually acting like you are the tech teacher. We've also got the children's stories events, where part of the children's stories event is after you make your children's story, you actually have to go into a classroom and read it to a group of kids and then get feedback on that story from those kids. So I think TSA, along with all the other CTSOs, we do a really good job of just instilling that classroom. And you have to go into the classrooms. You've got to learn from the kids as well as teach them.
Thanks for sharing. And I want to say I did have the opportunity to attend the Educators Rising Conference, and I got to listen to the students present in their competitive events, and it was a very great day to hear all the young individuals who are aspiring to become educators. So thank you for your comment, Jim.
So as Mr. Porter said, this is a really great time of year for us, and we're sorry that some of your other colleagues and friends couldn't be with us today because of weather and other travel arrangements. But we look forward to lunch with all of you, spending more time. One of the things that I always enjoyed in my time in schools, and I know that those of us that spent time in schools, every month I would just pull randomly in McPherson where I was at, give me 2 sophomores, 2 freshmen, and we would have lunch and just talk about the future and how we can make school better. Dr. Ben Proctor's been doing that on a statewide basis in the last few months, where he's going around just having some focus groups with young people. So your input to the state board is extremely valuable from your perspective, because that helps formulate policy that then applies to other students. So thank you for your work. My question to you is, have you thought about life after high school? And just what your thoughts are, if you have thought about, you know, what the future may hold for you.
As a junior, I have thought about life after high school. It's kind of an overwhelming feeling when you're in school, but FCCLA has definitely helped me bridge the gap between what I want my future employer to look like, as well as different skills that I can use in my workforce that is universal. For me personally, I really enjoy biology class and science, which you might think, well, why is she in FCCLA if she's so into biology and science? But FCCLA gives me a different avenue to look at science through culinary arts as well as the development of children and families. It gives me an application of science in the real world and gives me skills that will help me in my future. I personally know that I want to work with kids in the future, and FCCLA has helped me so much to be able to interact with children because sometimes they're having a great day and other times they're not. So, to be able to understand children and how they develop, as well as common issues that children face in their development, is something that I believe will really help me in the future and will be a great resource for so many families as FCCLA members become part of their own families, and as they're a part of families now, they help keep the family together and help keep the family thriving, which is a huge part of society.
Dr. Watson, as a senior in my second semester, that hit a little too close to home there, but they got a little too real. So I kind of wanted to do pre-law and political science after high school, and that's kind of what I've landed on. I want to be a lawyer and be a plaintiff's attorney eventually someday. So I've kind of thought about that as well as going into the political field. So that's why these events like this are so important to me, because that, like I said in my speech, allows me to build relationships and allows me to see what I'm really getting into. So I think this experience has always been really good for me for the past 4 years, and I've really enjoyed being here.
Um, I have thought about what I want to do after high school. I want to go to school to be a respiratory therapist. Skills USA has like given me the confidence to push forward and do that. It also has many health career competitions that you can compete in at state levels. So I think that helps a lot too, because like you're competing already in those health care competitions. So it helps like going into after high school.
I just want to thank everyone again for standing in for those who couldn't be here. And thank you all. You are so well spoken and represented your chapters very well. So I think that we will probably do some photographs. Am I correct? And perhaps a standing ovation. So we'll effectively go to break until 10. We'll do some photos and then we'll be back here at the table at 10 o'clock. We're here to act on updated Kansas early learning standards and maybe have some discussion as well.
Well, good morning, everybody. I know that over the past 3 months or so, we've had pretty extensive conversation about this update to the Kansas Early Learning Standards. I wanted to refresh on just a few things about these standards that I think are very important before we share a couple of very minor changes that we've made since we last came together, and then be prepared to take action on approving these updates. First, I think that remembering the purpose of these standards is incredibly helpful. These are intended to give shared guidance in terms of what we expect young kids to know and be able to do in that birth through 5 years old, really critical period of growth and development. And the reason why it is so helpful that we have these standards is because we have a wide range of professionals who serve young children in this area. And so having some common expectations and some common guidelines available from the state is a very helpful piece for these early educators as we are all working towards a shared goal of making sure that young kids can be as prepared as possible for that critical transition into kindergarten. As we think about our state board goal of kindergarten readiness, these standards are an essential component of making sure that we have common guidelines and common expectations about young children's development that can be used across early learning settings and into kindergarten so that our professionals, no matter whether they are working in a school-based preschool or if they so choose a licensed child care program, a home visiting program, a parents as teachers program, can have some direction in terms of young children's growth and development. It is also very helpful to remember that these standards are guidelines. Nobody is coming to individual parents and demanding or mandating that they use these standards. So we do quite regularly receive phone calls from parents who might be opting to not enroll their children in a formal preschool and who are looking for some kind of guidance in terms of what they might expect from children's growth and development. And when we receive those calls, these are a very helpful resource to be able to share. But again, these are voluntary standards that are not required for use for parents if they so choose. It is also helpful to remember that is what's helpful to remember. It's also helpful to remember that we've had these standards in Kansas for quite some time. They were first completed and adopted in 2006 and then subsequently reviewed and revised and updated in 2009 and 2013. Some have asked why we need an update of the standards, and I was sharing earlier that when I began in my role about 5.5 years ago, it had been some time since 2013 since the state had reviewed and updated these standards. And one common question that I received from principals or administrators or other early educators was, when is the state going to review these standards to make sure that they're still current and to make sure that they're the best that they can be? So it's not that there have been radical changes to young children's growth and development, but it is good practice for us to be periodically reviewing them. And in this particular update, I am especially proud of the work that the collaborative team has done to make sure that these can be as clear as possible and as user-friendly as possible so that they can really make the greatest impact across our state system. So we have made just a few minor changes to these standards since you last saw them in November.
Yes, so the first thing that we noticed is we replaced the front cover KSDE logo that was on there with the All In for Kansas Kids logo. That just represents the partnership across all of our early childhood agencies that use these standards. We also just did a quick numbering update of the document pages to match the screen version and the print version. Nothing drastic there.
We began adding logos for all of the different agencies who have a role in these standards or who are partners, and we were very quickly running out of space on the page to represent the breadth of the partnership. So we decided that having that one shared logo for our state strategic plan for early childhood made more sense. I've also passed out and shared, we had someone flag for us that some of the language on page 1 in the background section of the early learning standards could be more clear. So we updated one sentence and it now reads, as it's referring to the work that was done during this review of the Kansas early learning standards. I'll read the sentence before for some context. As with previous revisions, the work focused on updating the standards based upon new and current knowledge and research. Additionally, specific focus was placed on developmentally appropriate practices, ease of use and accessibility, as well as the incorporation of practices to ensure commitment to responsive and respectful early learning environments and supporting children from diverse backgrounds. This document is another result of the extensive collaboration that is part of the Kansas early childhood education community. And as before, we have not changed the section on pages 8 and 9, which describes in more detail what it means to make sure that we have a good, strong commitment to responsive and respectful early learning environments that can be supportive of children from the many different backgrounds that we serve in our Kansas early childhood programs. We also, in this document, reference a really terrific resource. It's a joint policy statement from the United States Department of Health and Human Services and the United States Department of Education, and it speaks to the importance of including preschool students with disabilities in the general education classroom. That document was updated to include more recent research on November 28th of last year. It had previously last been updated in 2015, and so we updated the link so that if people are looking for the most current version of that document, they can find it.
Our friends in the humanities department also helped me realize that the standards we had in for our kindergarten social studies standards were outdated. So we replaced it with our current social studies standards. There's only one kindergarten standard for all of our social studies, Kansas history, government, and social studies standards. So we placed that in all 4 of our early childhood standards under kindergarten. So now we have standard 1, choices have consequences, for each of the kindergarten social studies standards.
We've shared previously, but would be really remiss if we didn't remind everybody and also give proper acknowledgement that this was a really incredible collaborative effort. These are standards that we use at the Kansas State Department of Education, but are also really broadly used amongst our Kansas early childhood community and are used by other partners. And so we had a core team who worked led by Natalie McLean and Kimberly Kennedy, who did incredible work over the past 2 years or so to lead this effort. Their names are listed here at the Kansas State Department of Education. We have Natalie McLean. Kimberly Kennedy is the Head Start Collaboration Office Director at the Kansas Department for Children and Families. Our Kansas Head Start Association Executive Directors Jennifer Adema and then Heather Schroetberger were members of our core team. Representing Part B and Part C, so the full continuum of services for young children with disabilities and developmental delays at KSDE, we had Julie Rand, and at the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, Tricia Wagner. Michelle Gilbert from Child Care Aware of Eastern Kansas, who you all met in November. Jennifer Francois from Kansas Child Care Training Opportunities. Amy Meek, we appreciate, is here right there from the Kansas Children's Cabinet and Trust Fund. Misty Gosen from the Kansas In-Service Training System. Jennifer Pishney from Kansas State University. Jennifer Forker from Hutchinson Community College. Jenny Mamat from the University of Kansas Center for Public Partnerships and Research. Clayton Gerard is here, also from the University of Kansas Center for Public Partnerships and Research, and Julia Gruss, also from the KU team. Without those teammates from KU, they were incredibly patient and incredibly helpful as we worked to coordinate this very large effort. And that's not all. We had a much wider group of people who were able to provide support on individual areas.
Yes, so we also pulled in content area specialists as we worked on each of our content areas. So Kathy Barton was a family child care representative. We had Shannon Benoit from Wichita USD 259, Sharon Bauer from our Early Childhood Connections, Sheila Burlestein, who was also here in November from Bright Beginnings in Dodge City, USD 443, Jenny Bracy, who's part of our Kansas In-Service Training System, Grace Cott, Child Care Aware of Eastern Kansas. We had Stephanie Wiggins, who is Kansas Child Care Training Opportunities Infant Toddler Specialist Network representative. We have Haley Heineck, who is also part of our Kansas Child Care Training Opportunities team. Samantha Mothersbaugh from Growing Futures. Stephanie Parks is from the University of Kansas. Brooke Weigel, who is part of the Kansas Child Care Training Opportunities team. We have Carla Winterschleit from Kneecap Head Start, and Betsy Lister from Bright Circle Preschool as well.
And in addition to all of these incredible professionals who so generously lent their time and expertise to this project, we also, over the course of the last 2 years, took this work regularly to the very many professionals who serve on advisory councils and boards in our Kansas early childhood system. Those are listed here, and we very much appreciate the time that people lent in their meetings, the valuable feedback that we gained in those opportunities. We were able to visit with our colleagues here at the Kansas State Department of Education on the Career Standards and Assessment Services team to ensure that these can be well aligned to our kindergarten standards. We were able to open this up in a broad way to those folks who regularly tune in to monthly webinars to hear about updates on our state All In for Kansas Kids strategic plan for early childhood. We presented these standards several times to the Kansas Early Childhood Recommendations Panel, which serves as an advisory group to the Kansas Children's Cabinet and Trust Fund on our overall early childhood system. Our Kansas Head Start Association program managers provided feedback. These are, you can think of them as curriculum leaders in our schools, those similar personnel in our Kansas Head Start programs. The Kansas State Interagency Coordinating Council gave feedback with an eye specifically towards children with disabilities or developmental delays, birth to 5. We hosted a session at our KSDE annual conference and gathered feedback from those attendees. And we also gathered both written public feedback and held a public feedback Zoom where we heard from a range of folks. And then, of course, we've received feedback from you all. So with that, we're glad to answer any questions. And then at the appropriate time, we have a recommended motion that the Kansas State Board of Education adopt the updated Kansas Early Learning Standards as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson. Excuse me. So I want to make sure that I heard you clearly. The current Kansas Early Learning Standards are from 2013.
That's correct.
Okay. And there was a public feedback Zoom.
That's
And
correct.
there are a lot of people that have been involved in this. Answer real quick before we start the conversation. What happens if we vote this down?
That's a tough question. It means that we continue using the outdated 2013 standards that we think are not as clear and not as streamlined as they could be. And I think we probably also have a very interesting conversation with our partners about whether other parts of our Kansas early childhood system would like to go ahead and use these updated and, in our opinion, superior standards and leave our schools with the outdated version.
I mentioned that just because I know that I have gotten a lot of email on this. I shouldn't say a lot of email. I have gotten some email on this, and folks are referring to them, I'll just be very transparent, as baby standards. And there are concerns that we're sending people into homes, and there are a lot of interesting ideas as far as what's perceived as overreach. And so maybe we can start a conversation here and try to answer some of those questions. I will lead with one. When I think about standards from the state board perspective, we assess students based on standards. So we're not assessing young children, are we?
No, these standards are not used as an assessment. But when you think about our K-12 standards, right, we also don't assess our kindergartners. The reason why we have standards that build downwards from the areas that we do assess is so that there can be that clear continuum of expectations and learning from the time that learning starts. We know that learning begins long before a child enters kindergarten, but that children can be on a smooth pathway towards success later in school and in life. A really common use of these standards is to be able to compare the kindergarten standards, which are listed in the document, and then what might be done as children are 3 and 4 years old so that there is that smooth continuum of learning, and so that our preschool teachers and our kindergarten teachers have similar expectations about what kids of a particular age know and should be able to do. We want to avoid situations where our kindergarten teachers think one thing in terms of what children's development should be at a particular age, and our preschool teachers think something different. That doesn't lend itself well to good quality instruction and experiences for kids and families as they transition from preschool into kindergarten.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start with Ann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have one question. Whose job is it in the state of Kansas to set early learning standards?
I would say that it's a shared responsibility. I would certainly hope that the state board would continue to accept part of that responsibility. And then also our Kansas Children's Cabinet and Trust Fund is designated in our several places.
Whose job is it to set early learning standards for public schools?
The Kansas State Board of Education.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is our job. Some people may not like that part of our job. We actually have most of our standards aren't assessed. They are model standards like art, language, all that stuff. But for math, science, history, and English language arts, they are assessed. So these are model standards. I think you guys have done an amazing job updating them from 2013. They're way clearer, and it is our job. I mean, if we don't like them, we can suggest changes. That's great. We do that on all the standards, can suggest that. But to say, I'm not going to do my job is really not an option. That's what we were elected to do, to set these for public schools. And I agree. I think if something would happen and we wouldn't approve these for our schools so we can have a great transition from preschool now, which we've been given more responsibility in, to kindergarten, that'd be just a dereliction of duties. And we can disagree on what should be in there, but we do need to set them. And I wouldn't blame our partners for taking the new ones and moving on and leaving us behind if we don't figure that out. So thank you so much for all your work. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Michelle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think what I heard at the very beginning too was common government standards and guidance, which I feel like these are experts have given their advice, their opinions. Obviously, things have evolved, things have changed. We've seen the different years. Things obviously change over time. We see new methods. We've also, I mean, look what we've done with 3Qing. We've found out that sight words and that, and we had probably 5 years of that went, you know, on and on as far as going in a big district that did that from kindergarten from 2010 to 2015. So when I don't mind, there's a lot of good information here, a lot of good guidance, a lot of good, I guess, expectations. Again, it's coming from, if you say the state's coming from the state. So I would like to see the word standards as more guidance and change to, you know, like as far as suggestions or expert suggestions. Obviously, since they do change, we've added new things because things change over time, rather than the word standard. I think that's where parents are like, wait a minute, you know, what standards are for, like graduation standards, and they see things where you're assessed later and throughout time we assess the kids on those tests. So that's where I am right now as far as guidance, a suggestion, not a standard. I don't like the word standard, and I think that would be easily removed. You could leave everything in there and take out the word standard, especially for any child that doesn't even have to go to school till the age of 7 based on Kansas law. They could be home with their families or learning with their families and being the foundations with their parents a little bit longer. Thank you.
Kathy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I went back to the November meeting and was rewatching and listening because there had been a statement made that struck me not good. And that statement was, if providers are using the standards, they'll notice when kiddos are not meeting or able to do the things in there, it will tip them off to contact local child find. I'm sorry, but in my brain, you've just assessed a child and now you're intervening with a child. And we're talking 0 to pre-K. So I definitely back up Michelle's words on resource and guidelines, and you've used them. That's what you're saying they are. So again, why can't the title reflect what you're actually telling us these are to be used as? And again, I think we would see a lot of people go, okay, you're talking about guidance for the people in the schools and in these centers who are dealing with the children, and yes, they need guidance. We want to make sure people are on the same page, but children develop so differently. I had 6 kids, lots of people around me. I mean, watching the variety and the different times and stages, I mean, just within my own 6 was amazing. And I had doctors who wanted to get upset and be like all freaked out because they didn't sit on their chart right where they wanted them to. But one of them's now 6 foot tall and the other one just was smaller statured like me, you know? So there's so many differences, and these do have some pretty specific things said in there. So the 2-year-old might be 4 before he's doing what other 2-year-olds are doing, but that doesn't mean there's anything wrong. So I think if we could put resources, guidelines, something that doesn't say, because to me the word standard says, this is it. And with that comment, to me that just really solidifies that, and that's a concern. And I think that's what we're hearing in some of these emails, is just that concern. So, thank you.
So I want to remind the board that standards is actually been used since the beginning of the state board to determine your role in the Constitution to set those guidelines for schools. That's what standards are. So we're setting those for students that choose to come to school, or provide services in grades 3 and 4, and giving those to anyone who might want to use those or look at those as guidance, not forced upon anyone. But standards is the common word that we've been using since the early 1970s to define that guidance. So that is what it is. I just want you to know that is the definition. It is we do assess a handful of those standards. We do not assess the others. But that is the work that the state board was charged with in the Constitution. So I just want you to understand that it's not an assessed standard. It's not saying that if students not here, something's wrong. It is, I think, exactly what you're describing, but that is the definition of Kansas standards.
Thank you, Commissioner. Dennis?
Thank you, Amanda, and your team for the hard work and communicating with me. I would just remind everybody, and everybody knows this, our main goal is to protect children in any form we can. And Jesus said, "Let the little children come unto me, for such is the kingdom of heaven. And if anyone abuse a child, let a millstone be hung around his neck and they be dropped in the middle of the sea." So that's my worldview. So I'm not against your work, because I see the hard work and I see your efforts. And I appreciate you listening and changing some of the wordage, because that could be really misrepresented on that first page in the background that you changed. And also, I want to also say that, and I'm giving you the negatives here up front. The media use on page 12, I like the 4 points you make there about the instruction. I just think because of research, there should be a precautionary type statement there about the harm. It's alluded to somewhat, but I think it could be really identified in bold print or whatever, that is really harmful to children, probably 2 and under. I think that's research, what it shows. The other thing, I think there was a research done from Harvard that learning begins in the womb, which is really interesting, and I think that it's really important. And, if that actually is true, then we need to protect children in the womb. I'm just going to say that, because some people don't recognize the humanity of what's going on in the womb. Well, we're all about education, so let's start protecting them there. I'll just say that up front. Then here, a few questions I have then. I like the phrase "give guidance." Yeah, that's what we want to do. We want to encourage educators to do the right thing. Do you foresee any more revisions coming? We've done 4 in less than 2 decades.
I would expect that, so for this version, we heard feedback from the people who use them on a regular basis that they were due for an update and that they could be clearer. So moving forward, I would certainly hope that it's not in the next immediate few years. I think that this was a pretty significant amount of work, and I feel very proud of the work product that's been created. I'm hoping that it's one that can stand the test of time. But I would expect that and I don't want to put a time frame on it, but within the next decade that we will be looking at them to see whether or not they need to be updated.
And did I hear you say that it was educators in the field, administrators coming to you and asking.
So in
if,
particular saying, here are standards either that we have questions about what they mean, or you might recall that a big piece of this work was making sure that standards appear in just one place and aren't repeated multiple times throughout the document. We heard that that was confusing.
I'm okay with that. I like the idea that educators are on top of things, but I'm not okay with cultural pressure. If you understand, I mean, that's kind of a big field, but there's so many things going on in our culture that are telling us and robbing freedom, that are trying to pigeonhole people. So I would not be okay with cultural pressure to do a revision. There was just at least 12 to 14 agencies, whatever, involved. Do you see that being combined so that there's less government by you producing revision?
I'm not sure. I think that it is good practice for us to be aware of the really wide range of both governmental and private entities that use these standards. And I'm a big believer of making sure that if you're going to do a project, that you invite all of the affected people to the table. So as we were planning this work, we worked to make sure that all of the different agencies that support early childhood could have a role. I do think in Kansas that we are a bit of an outlier in the nation in that we have quite a few state agencies who are involved in the provision of early childhood services. So there is some open conversation about whether or not some consolidation could be more efficient.
Yeah, and so I think I hear you saying that that'd be a good thing if we would narrow it down and
There's
make
potential for that to
less.
improve.
Okay, make it less encumberment or whatever. Well, I know that you put a lot of effort into this, and I'm going to vote yes on it because I like the effort, but I'm going to be watching our suspect. Okay, and I want to know what's going on in the field. I visited, 2 facilities in Hutchinson, and I see them doing a good job. I mean, I appreciate what they're doing, but when it comes, I just love children, and I do not want anything to injure children. So if we're all on the same page, okay? Thank you.
Dennis, I want to clarify. So we try to operate within the Constitution and the statute. So statute says that standards will be at least reviewed every 7 years. Doesn't mean that they change. It means that any team, science, takes a look at that on a cycle, and that's driven by statute. And then the state board is charged within the Constitution to develop those. So I wanted you to know they are, not just this, art, music, PE, language arts, has a cycle of review then. And then sometimes those come back. I'll use math, and maybe there's just a minor change in mathematics, and things go on. But I did want you to know that is in statute.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I see that as a good thing, that there's constant review and what we can do a better job on. But in human nature, some things never change. That's where I'm coming from. Children are children, and we're the protectors.
Anne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to offer to make a motion so we could just formally debate, but if you want to wait until later, that's fine.
Okay, go ahead. I'll accept a motion.
I move that the Kansas State Board of Education adopt the updated Kansas Early Learning Standards as presented.
Second from Dina. Okay, continue discussion. Danny.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've read this whole book and got a lot of yellow things in it. I appreciate the hard work you're doing, but I'm not gonna, I can't, I've tried this last month to go over things, and I can't, you're not gonna indoctrinate kids. You're not gonna brainwash kids, because that's what's going on here, that everybody thinks the same. and everybody reacts the same. And our nation is found on individuals. And if we're wanting every baby to react the same when somebody talks to them, I'm sorry. And I think we're indoctrinating the teachers also, because the teachers have to teach those kids to react a certain way. And I totally disagree with that, because our nation, also public schools, are founded on teachers being able to do their thing in their own way, and which is really important. So each teacher is going to react differently to that child the way they are acting. And I think when we take those things away, these are the standards that you have to, I really, really have struggled with that. And the other part of it is, now I'll go to the taxpayer side. So again, I've said this before, I'm on welfare and I just had a baby. Or maybe I had triplets. So I've decided that I don't work or anything, but I'm on government assistance. So I'm going to take mine now that we have they're out of the womb. I'm going to take and let you guys babysit with them. And I'm going to go back home. I'm going to watch TV or be on my phone, do whatever I want to do. I'm going to let you guys indoctrinate my babies. So we're going to end up spending more taxpayer money because already we've spent money in bond issues of early childhood centers. I mean, I'm sorry, they're not childs, they're babies. They're just, I'll be quiet because I could go on and on and on. But I do appreciate the work you're doing. I just happen not to agree with it. Thank you.
I would appreciate being able to clarify two things, perhaps for any folks who might be listening along or for the future. We do recognize, and in the training for the early learning standards, recognize that these standards represent a wide range of development, that children will reach particular milestones at different times. And so these do provide some common guidance to understand typical development and to be a starting point to be able to have conversations, to be able to identify if there is a particular delay or a particular area of concern. And if there is, rest assured that under Kansas special education law, our parents are in the driver's seat for determining whether or not an evaluation is conducted and whether or not services are provided. But the research tells us that if we do have a child who has a delay in a particular area, that the sooner we can intervene, the more likely it is to be effective, right? It is best to be able to make sure that children can receive any additional supports that they need as early as possible, rather than wait until later on when there's a wider gap to remediate. So I hope that we all understand that as we're thinking about the role of these standards. I hope that we also all recognize that the early years of a child's life are a really critical period of brain development, and that if we do hope to make sure that all children can get the best possible start in life, that making sure that that can be the case regardless of their family's economic situation is likely an approach that is going to lead to better outcomes for students later on.
As a follow-up, before I go to the next question, can you give an example or maybe a couple of those delays that are most common?
So we do have really great data on some of these pieces, but being able to show at particular ages what we receive. But we do have, many children who might come into early learning centers or into kindergarten who have speech delays, perhaps might need some additional speech language services to be able to correct articulation issues or to be able to help them make sounds and be able to speak. And so that is a really useful piece. Also, things as simple as very regular screenings of hearing and vision can help identify children who might be having difficulty in those areas so that they can be getting the supports that they need as soon as possible so that they can see and hear, which are things that are very important when we're thinking about early brain development.
As someone who works with the State School for the Blind, I appreciate that one. I'll go to Betty.
Oh, thank you. And actually, some of the comments that I was going to make have already been covered. I just want to kind of remind the board when we talk about standards, it is the same way when you go to the doctor. There's a standard blood pressure reading. That's what we look at. Okay, how far have you deviated? Is it within a range? The word standard seemed to be more the issue, the semantics of standards, instead of looking at the fact that standards govern our lives. We are looking at um, when a kid should be able to read. And if that kid cannot read at that point, then we know that some kind of intervention, something is needed. It's not trying to pigeonhole children or saying, you know, you should be able to do this at this time. It's an indicator for a lot of parents. If my child is 5 years old and cannot sit up, does that not indicate that maybe I need some kind of intervention? So when we get on our soapboxes, I'm just encouraging us to be realistic. These are guidelines. They let us know if our children are developing. It doesn't say that if they can't sit up at 9 months, there's a problem. That's not what it's doing. It's giving you an idea of when children progress, what can we measure? How can we measure their developments? What kinds of things can we do to help promote the health of our kids? Now, if we don't vote for this, it doesn't eliminate standards. It just says we still operate under antiquated ideas. This is simply updating what's already in place. And I am just hoping that we will ground our thinking and look at the fact that there's some things that needed to be changed. There's some wording that simply could have been stated better, cleaned up. That's what we're doing is taking 2013 and bringing it up to 2024. It's not going to change the fact that is the word standards there? Yeah, it's there. It's going to be there. It's dictated that it's going to be there. So hopefully we can get out of our way and do our job, which is to make sure we have effective, up to date guidelines for those that want and need guidelines, that those are in place. Thank you.
Danny.
Thank you. I hate putting labels on any child. And so I struggle with a lot, and each baby develops differently. And they might change that fast. And they're labeled. And once they're labeled, that causes mental health.
I don't see any more questions. Are we ready to vote? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? 7-3. Motion passes. Deborah, you got all that? And I'm just going to follow up. I had a comment, but I didn't want to make it before the vote. Like Dennis, I appreciate all of the updates. You guys have done tremendous work on this. And in December, I asked some questions about device usage among the younger set and what would be good guidelines. And as part of kind of thinking through that, talking with some folks in the department, I'm going to stay on the bandwagon of we really need to address device usage at a K through 12. I think there's a lot of opportunity to talk about when is it appropriate to be using devices. So I appreciate the updates that you made. I'm good with the changes that you made, and I just want to say that was a lot of people that were involved in this, and you guys have done a tremendous job. So congratulations to all of you. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you all.
Okay, I think we are ready for the consent agenda portion. There have been requests to pull items E, F, and G. All right. I would entertain a motion on items A through D for the consent agenda. Jim Porter and Dina. Any discussion on A through D? I'll make sure I've got the right ones. All in favor of approving consent agenda items A, B, C, and D, raise your hand. All right, that is 10-0. And then we have Shane Carter here to present on item E. Welcome, Mr. Carter.
Good morning, Madam Chair. So I don't know if you want questions to be asked first or to me to just go ahead and start and give a quick summary, which would be easier. Okay, so I'll go ahead and give you the bottom line up front of why you did receive this on the consent agenda item or as a consent agenda item. So the Department of Commerce Office of Apprenticeships received a Meadowlark grant over the summer. They received $6 million to invest in registered apprenticeship programs. There are a couple of different state entities, Department of Corrections and the State Board of Education, our registered teacher apprenticeship program that were included in this a grant to receive funds. So out of that $6 million, we did receive approximately $3 million to fund our registered teacher apprenticeship program. So that money was awarded officially. We didn't get noticed that it was awarded until towards the end of July, August, but it's effective July 1st of 2023. So we have 3 years in which to implement those funds into our program. So as we've started our pilot, and we've been going through the pilot process, we've been trying to set up and implement structures to make sure that when we open this statewide, that we've kind of worked through all the processes that could possibly potentially cause delays or issues for our districts receiving funding reimbursement. So for these Meadowlark funds, this is our opportunity now this semester to take advantage of getting those structures in place to ensure that we're able to spend those funds and reimburse our districts in a timely manner. So right now our program is mainly funded by GEAR funding, which we're using to pay for tuition, some employment wage reimbursement, teacher mentoring stipends, and things of that nature. As we move forward, these Meadowlark funds, they're only going to be used to pay for tuition, mentor stipends, and some of the administrative costs and conferences or trainings that we set up for our apprentices. The wage reimbursement will not be part of those funds. So we have to identify funding sources, determine what we can use those funds for, and then set up those structures to support that and give the districts a clear way forward of how we're going to reimburse them for a specific set of costs. So we requested that to pay for some tuition for our pilot program for this next semester so we could finalize and get those structures in place. And because come August 2024, the Meadowlark grant will be our main funding for this program. The reason why, the funds that are set aside for the registered teacher apprenticeship within the Kansas statute, formerly known as House Bill 2292, there is a probationary period that's on there, so we won't be able to access those funds until an individual's been in that program for a year. So there will be a delay. So come August, we'll submit another request for and finalize those structures with Department of Commerce to reimburse our apprentices via the House Bill 2292 funds. So kind of 3 phases, and then as we go along, we have to adjust. As through our pilot, we've learned that some people have qualified for some scholarships or Pell Grants and things of that nature, so we haven't had to utilize the funds we had set aside, so we have to reallocate those as we go along. So hopefully that didn't confuse anyone.
Any additional questions there? Oh, Michelle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just clarification, Meadowlark, so it's not like where Kansas said, we need, teacher prep programs, we need to expand teacher apprentice things, and we're going to go ahead and donate money and give money out of their pockets to something to fund this. This is coming from, the money's coming from where? Taxpayers?
So originally it was a grant that was requested by Department of Commerce through the Department of Labor. And then Department of Commerce received these funds, and then they allocated $3 million to us. So for those grant funds from Department of Labor, yes, it would be be taxpayer money.
Okay, thank you for clarification.
Ann?
Yeah, I don't know why anybody have a concern about this. This is one of the few times the legislature did something to help us grow the teacher corps in a cooperative way. I mean, we've had apprenticeship programs for a long time, and then they decided, why don't we add education to the list of adult apprenticeships that we have and put $3 million toward it, and I'm going, yippee. I mean, if we can help young kids who want to be teachers pay their tuition, work while they go to school, and grow our teacher corps, oh my gosh, that's like, yeah, let's do it. So anyway, appreciate all the work you did to help make this happen. Thanks.
Kathy?
This was about clarifying where the funds were coming from, because what the funds Shane is talking about now are not the funds that were attached to the legislation, and they're not the gear funds. So it's a whole separate thing that I didn't know about, and to me, the agenda item just wasn't clear.
Okay.
So that's why I asked Shane if he would clarify how these funding sources were working, and that we needed to do it now, even though we had the gear funds until the end of September. So, you know, understanding that there's a structure that you have to put in place so that you know when you need them, it's all ready to go. That makes complete sense. But again, I just wasn't catching all of that through what was written, and really appreciate the time you spent responding to me, but I felt like it was something we needed to understand as a full board, that we have actually 3 different funding streams we're talking about now. The gear funds that started the pilot, the Meadowlark, I'm not sure why they're called that, but the Meadowlark fundings is the in-between, because what the legislature gave was great, but it's still restrictive and not a lot per person, correct?
That is correct.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
And Madam Chair, I will be providing a full update on the registered teacher apprenticeship to the board in the near future, and this will be covered again. And hopefully, the timing of this was, you know, if we could have married those up together, it may have helped me avoid any confusion I may have created. So sorry about that.
Thank you for coming down to answer questions. I
All right,
don't
thank
see any more. Jim Porter?
I move that we approve consent agendas E.
Thank you. Is there a second? Dina? Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? 9-0, or 9-1. Motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And we will move on to item F. I believe that Dean is here. Welcome. And I don't see any in the hand raise app yet. Do you want to start with a question or just a quick overview? If you have a specific question, you can just, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So when I was looking at the amounts, the 380 million, and then it looks like about 40 million, correct me if I'm wrong, it goes to compliance every year. Is that correct? Like I'm seeing like 40 million. So when we always are talking about, especially in that meeting on the 5th, they were talking about different special ed funding, and then the money that doesn't come in from the federal government. I mean, they have laws and everything, but we don't always get fully funded from the federal government. We get about, 13%? I think sometimes we hear that amount. They're supposed to give 40 and they give about 13%. So how do we secure like 380 million? Are we getting less 13% of that, or are we getting that full amount of 380 million? Those were my questions, as far as we're always talking about not fully funded. Why are we getting it sometimes and it's full 380 million, and then other times, and I know that's going over, we get that every year, and then there's 200 million or something that's going into compliance, just to pay for compliance. So it's very confusing.
Sure, I think we can provide some clarity to that because there are a lot of numbers there, a lot of different big numbers, and especially when we're talking with respect to state special education funding and the different federal pots of money and who's responsible for what and what's compliance and what's serving and providing supports and services to schools and districts. A lot of that can get muddled and intertwined. First up, with respect to that approximately $380 million that the special education and title services team administers, and some of that is CSAS also, and a little bit of other teams that have some work too with these federal funds. That is based on the actual amount that we receive annually from the U.S. Department of Education. So none of this is state money. This is completely federal aid, and this is different from, say, the ESSER aid or others. I don't know, because it was just earlier this morning. We did share we sent a PDF breakout to Secretary Bremer, that has the U.S. Department of Education's budget breakout for Kansas that details all of those different line items. And just the 90,000 foot, the 30,000 foot view is simply that, that's a little over, we've got over $100 million annually for IDA funding, well over $100 million now for all of the ESA programs, not just Title I, but Title II for professional development for teachers, Title III for English learners, et cetera, as well as other programs for things like CTE, et cetera, that are administered by other teams. All of that together adds up to about $380 million. Vast majority of which goes out to the school districts directly. It's only a small portion of that that is required to be reserved by the state for required services and supports that we have to provide to our districts and to educators throughout the state and students throughout the state. To maybe also kind of address that does a request for does a request for an authorization up to $200 million for the entirety of the 5 years, does that mean that we're spending $40 million per year on compliance? And the answer is no. The important context here is that, one, we're requesting an authorization of up to $200 million because we are at the very early stages of beginning what will be TASN 4.0, the fourth iteration of the Technical Assistance Systems Network. And each iteration is a five-year cycle. Where we are on the path for that TASN 4.0 is we are today asking for the authorization to utilize that as those grants come in over the next 5 years, beginning in 2025, to ensure that we have sufficient, that we've sufficiently accommodated the different possibilities of what federal funding might look like and the projects might look like over those 5 years. It gives us some flexibility because starting in January starting this year, if the board approves this, we will then begin the process of issuing the priorities and issuing the competitive process that then over the next year and a half, identifying, evaluating, and finally entering into agreements with the different projects that will begin providing the services on July 1, 2025. So it's a long runway, and that's part of why we have to have why we build in some wiggle room on the front end for this. And this is very similar to almost exactly what, in terms of the framework, this is the same framework that we utilized in January of 2019. The numbers are a little bit different, but that reflects the gradual shift in the overall funding for different federal programs, as well as the kind of accounting for the wide variance we see in some of the different proposed appropriations over the next couple of years at a federal level. But I guess the last thing I want to really reiterate too is that the money is for services that are required to meet our obligations under Elementary and Secondary Education Act and the Individuals with Disability Education Act, but they are primarily services and supports to our districts and our educators, not the actual compliance work. That's really done by in-house staff. The actual services provided by the Technical Assistance Systems Network is things like Kansas MTSS alignment supports. It's like the work with letters, the work with our autism tertiary behavior supports, Kansas Schools for the Blind, Kansas Schools for the Deaf supports there, and as well as and of course Carrie Hay can speak to a lot of that. But we do also have tremendous data that drives all of this. So our priorities going into this next cycle are driven by the results and what was successful in the last cycle. So I'll be quiet for a moment because I went on there for a while and I imagine there's probably more questions.
So Dean did a great job, and I know Carrie, this is what she supports. So I'm going to kind of give you, again, an overall picture because there's so many things that come at you, and it's It's hard. This is so the TASN, the Technical Assistance Support Network, as Dean mentioned, is a 5-year cycle. We're getting ready to do that 5-year cycle. They're looking at their federal accountability data around special needs, title services needs, and then they're establishing what those are. So you hear from those people in the last 5 years a lot. MTSS, our families, Jane Groff and the families together. You don't hear much from our autism services, services to the School for the Blind and Deaf. Dean mentioned just a few of those. But that cycle comes out of the data. So this is to ask to go start that process in a competitive, in a contract bidding process that would then come back to you in order to do another 5-year cycle with that federal money that's there to support those needs as identified by the data that's happening with special needs students. Is that helpful? Again, it's not something you see every day. You see the work every day, but you don't see the contracts every day because it cycles on a 5-year cycle. As Dean said, fourth. So this is we're going on 20 years of that.
Thank you. Ann?
Thanks, Randy. I appreciate the additional explanation because if folks don't understand how important TASN is, you just need to call your districts and ask them. This is critical work and critical services. So, and thank you for your work on it.
Any additional questions, Michelle?
So thank you, Madam Chair. So that's what I was thinking is there's a lot. I had a lot of questions on just this one consent agenda item. And I think that's where we get the disconnect between the public, the legislators, and the state board. We put it in a consent agenda item and it barely gets touched on. And there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. And then there's a lot of data that's collected and there's a lot of data that the federal government wants as well. There's profitability off of data as well. So everybody needs to understand that. They thrive on that data. So I just want to make sure that on something like this, it's this big and this much money, and then we always are hearing about not getting enough fully funding for special ed from the federal government. There's a shortfall every single year. That's where I just want to know, we need to talk about, there is a lot of money spent on compliance and for every district. It's a lot just to make sure that all of those IEP, all those services are being met for those children, especially those on IEP. So I think that this being on a consent agenda item needed to be a topic, and we can discuss this so that the public that's listening can understand a little bit better of why we fall short or why we keep asking for more, maybe more money, or just making it more equitable. Whatever was discussed last week, there were a lot of things that were discussed. So I just felt like it needed to be as a topic rather than just on an item E or D on consent agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Michelle. I think that, every month there are items on consent, and it's sometimes hard to decide which ones we pull and do a full presentation on. So I appreciate that feedback. And as the chair, I will work harder to make sure that we're pulling out some of those things and having this full presentation. So appreciate your comments. May I have a motion to approve item F? Jim? And a second from Dina. Ready to vote? All in favor of item F, raise your hand. Betty, opposed? Abstain. 901. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dean, for being here, both of you. Item G, we do not need a presentation on, is my understanding. Just want to vote separately. G is act to enter into contract for Summer Academy's keynote speaker. Any questions or discussion? Ann.
I just think this is a great way to support our teachers. Everything I hear about this academy is amazing, and if we can get a great keynote speaker, all the better. Thank you.
Anyone else? All in favor of item G? We'll wait till Dr. Fernkopf is done. Oh, sorry, I need a motion.
I have one comment if I could. This is during our meeting.
Yeah, we're inviting you to come out on Monday.
I am going to try to be there on Monday.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I had that on the
We,
wrong year on my calendar, and I thought it was over a weekend, like Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and I'm like, that's weird. So I'm talking to Randy, he goes, I think it's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I was on the wrong
so
year, apparently.
you would be able to see the keynote speaker, which is even better. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of balls. So I'm like, yeah, it is Monday.
So I was looking down and then I was looking at Anne and I didn't realize that you were both here to talk about this. So do you want to just say a few words before we vote? Or if there are any questions?
We, the reason why we went for a good keynote speaker, of course, is to up our participants so that we get more participants, so that our money bank grows and we don't have to do this. But the main reason why we did it is because it follows the 4 fundamentals that that you have approved, and it also looks at the social emotional pieces that would combine. We wanted an educator that was still teaching or still in the classroom or still in the building. We think that provides some additional relevance for teachers. And we're still in a place where we have turnover, and we were wanting that note of bringing out the 4 fundamentals and the social emotional piece and having an author that does both. So that's what we were looking for when we made this.
The other piece I'll add is making sure that we have lots of options so that we're meeting all the teachers, everything from pre-K through 12th grade, so that the options, regardless of what you teach, you have options on both days. And then also making sure that there's college credit, because that's also important to the teachers so that they can make sure to get that college credit if they need to renew their license, because that's always important for the teachers. And that's also why we do things during the summer, because as you know, teachers are very busy during the school year, so we always try to offer something during the summertime.
David was talking, I'm like, oh, we didn't say this. On our last day, we are going to have a teacher trek. So on Wednesday, we're going to, depending upon the discipline, take those state agencies, like mine would be the Flint Hills Writing Project and the Kansas Association of Teachers of English. And we're going to plan a field trip using those standards to see how they work within real life. So I think that's another option that's going to be really neat for teachers to try.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, motion would be in order. Anne? Second from Jim. Ready to vote on item G? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? 9-1, motion passes. Okay, I'll try to go fast. Thank you both.
Thank you.
You may have gotten a blue card earlier. Our lunch location has changed, so please make sure that if you don't have a card, we can circle here in a few minutes.
This is important so that Dennis doesn't go to old Chicago.
Which was not Dennis's fault.
Sure that we don't end up in the wrong place.
You're not going to let me forget that, are you?
No, it's our fault. It's our fault. Yeah, it was closed.
Just trying to make sure everybody has the right location. So if you need, and if you're on the Zoom or on the YouTube stream for whatever reason and you need to know the location, reach out. Real quick for the chair report, I just have 2 short items. One is I've had a request from the Juvenile Justice Oversight Committee to ensure that we have a member that has been appointed to that committee. I previously appointed Danny Zeck, and so I'm formally replacing Danny Zeck with Betty Arnold on the Juvenile Justice Oversight Committee. And then, real quick, remarks from the chair, a point of personal privilege. I just want to thank, first of all, Jim Porter for chairing last month's board meeting while I was remote on Zoom. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in October of last year. And I just want to thank all the board members for your prayers, all the kind words and cards and emails and flowers. It was an interesting fourth quarter for me. I have had a great care team at the University of Kansas Medical Center, and just really grateful to have caught that cancer early and received excellent treatment. And I am well on my way to recovery, but I want to thank all of you and the department, the commissioner, and just the community that has supported me through that process. That is all that I have to say about that, other than I was diagnosed during October, which is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And it has been very interesting as I have shared this, my journey with people over the last couple of months, the number of people who have said, ooh, I need to get a check scheduled for blank. So if you are putting off your check for whatever, if you're putting off that scan, please go set that up. So I will move on to board travel requests. You have that in your packet. Do we have any changes to board travel? And if not, a motion would be in order to approve. Kathy and Dina? And yeah, emails to Deborah work as well. All right. All in favor of approving board travel, please raise your hand. Opposed? That looks like a 10-0 vote. Motion passes. Committee reports. Do we have any committee reports? Ann?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to bring up one more time the bill that I gave you last night. I didn't really expect everybody to go home and slog through it. But if you have questions, the reason I wanted to bring this up is this is about putting the Safe and Secure Schools Act into law. Up to this point, it's only been a proviso in the budget bill. So provisos go away every year unless they're renewed. So this puts that into statute, and it also creates a new requirement to do cardiac emergency standards. And it has stuff for us to do that involves cardiac emergencies. I mean, stuff we don't even do. So, and some of the stuff I think you guys would really like. The issue, the reason I want to bring this up is this was not on our priorities list because it wasn't even on our radar, okay? But it's somebody else's priority that involves us, we're knee-deep in. So when Dina and I get a bill like this, that it just pops up, and we know this is supposed to have a hearing like next week, then what we usually do is, short of having, a board meeting in between, is we just call Jim and Melanie and Scott Gordon and Randy and go, what do you guys want us to do with this? So, because I think to not file some testimony would be a huge mistake. That would say, everything you've got in here we agree with, and I'm sure you wouldn't, because it looks like at least one more full-time person on our staff that we don't have and they aren't going to fund. And it steps on Keisha. There's just a lot of stuff. I mean, it was all very well-intentioned. All of this stuff is good, but, we need to take a really close look at it. So just to let you know, when stuff comes up like this, I don't know that we can take a vote. It's not on an agenda item, but we kind of need to let you know this is what the process is when stuff like this comes up at the last minute.
Because you did hand it out yesterday, and we have all had a copy. If you have an opinion, it would be good. We can nod heads and arrive at a consensus without an official vote.
Yeah, because we still need to do more homework. Kathy, did you have a question?
Well, yeah, because as I read it, and granted it was late last night, but the funding made no sense to me. Like I said, it was late, but it was talking about through here, and then it was the secretary, and then it was.
Yeah, that's a good question. The way it's done in the past, the Safe and Secure Act, Secure Schools Act, the legislature has provided $5 million,
right,
and it has to be a match with the local school district. Well, I don't know, how many $1 million, Randy, did we get in requests last year?
Yeah, like 60.
A little bit more than double that.
Yeah, like 12 million, okay.
Right,
So we
somewhere in
get
that range.
12 million in requests, and some don't even bother because, 5 million spread across all the schools. So what we have done, and they gave the money directly to us, which the bill calls for going through the Treasury, which is another, not the best way to do it. Anyway, we just took it and just said, so we had schools that represented 200,000 kids make requests. We divided up the money 200,000 times and just gave it to them. We didn't have hearings or try to assess whether or not they were asking for the right thing for their district, you know. We just divided up the money. So that's how it's been done in the past. And then this bill creates a new fund, which they hope to get some money for, to provide those defibrillators to all the schools where they're needed. So.
Yes, sir. I believe through a grant with the American Heart Association, or at least, now this is years ago, Jim, you'll remember, we worked with the American
Really?
Heart Association
Okay.
to do, I mean, they came to you several years ago and said, we've got some grant, I don't know where they had the funding, but we have funding, and we encourage that. I think you do have a position on safe and secure schools.
Yeah, to continue
So,
that, I think.
and what this does is move from, in essence, from the proviso every year to more permanent status. The challenge, as you hear from schools, all right, is, well, we want to do communication systems, for example, right? This doesn't even touch it. I mean, we don't have enough money. And so I think that's an easy answer, and is the board does have a position on safe and secure schools. What complicated it was where the funding's going to go got changed, and now we inserted the cardiac things into this bill. And so when you read it, it becomes very confusing, because you're talking about security of schools, and you're talking about someone who maybe has a heart attack while in a school, and they seem to be different to me. And so that's what Ann's talking about. She can go support the core of the bill, but the bill's not the same anymore. And as she articulated, this happens to them dozens of times a year, where something comes up that we didn't know about, and the hearing's scheduled in 3 days, and we're trying to give some guidance with what you want to do. So I hope that's helpful.
I read the bill, and the schools already have all this stuff. I mean, they've had it for years.
Well, not all of them do.
Well, but
Yeah.
each school has their own
Right.
safe and secure, whatever they think they need.
They have to have
It even
AED.
talks about coaches
They,
having.
they only have it because we're required to make them have it, and it's in the law. If it wasn't in the law, they
May
wouldn't
I
have to have
suggest
it.
that we let the chair take over
That's
and
a-
call on
we can
people?
have that
I
question
had at least
too.
3 hands up, so let's back up. Dina had her hand up first. We'll go to Dina.
I'm sorry.
The concerns I have to do with where the funding goes, plus asking us to write standards surrounding all of this when we don't have anyone on staff that has the expertise to assist in the writing of those standards. So I think that's an issue. There's also an issue with, in my opinion, with the portion that deals with the athletics, because Keisha already has those kinds of rules and policies. And I'm concerned that if we start writing standards and guidelines, it'll get very confusing for coaches and athletic directors. So I think there's kind of an issue there. I did get an email from Bill Faflick saying that he had also talked to the lady that had contacted Anne, and he had informed her of all the things. I'm not so sure she didn't decide that it should all be in statute. Not everything needs to be in statute, because it's very cut and dry. And if you decide that something else needs to be done, then you have to go to the legislature to get them to add it or subtract it or whatever. So I'm just hesitant about the way this bill kind of approaches everything. Not that, as Ann said, this isn't a great idea, but there's probably a way to do it so it doesn't cause issues that don't need to be caused. Okay?
Jim Porter.
I agree with everything everybody said, but there's a small issue that I want to bring up. There's a training element into this. Everybody seems to think that anytime any problem can be solved by an hour or two of professional development, and that just adds to the dozens of other things that schools have to do. At some point, that means you got to add days for things that we've had. I think that when we start talking about what schools need for professional development, that we need to be making those decisions instead of somebody else making those decisions, because we need to take in consideration the impact. And at some point, adding hours here and adding hours there becomes an unfunded mandate to school districts, and they have plenty on their plate. And I don't disagree with anything here. I've had the training for CPR and the defibrillator whenever they were given to the school that I was in, probably 10 years ago. I couldn't do it now, even though I wouldn't, because I haven't done it since that time. But I'm very concerned whenever, because we've had this argument with legislators ever since I've been on this board. 2 or 3 hours of professional development seems to be the solution to everything, and it is not. The quality of what you do is important. The quantity is not.
Danny.
Even clear back when I was on the board I'm sorry, I'm supposed to get close, aren't I? So back in the dark ages, I mean, we addressed these things at the local level, always about safe and secure. Local in Leavenworth is different than local in Sabetha and local in McLeod. And I mean, the coaches have always, they've always been, I don't know, it's awesome what they do already. I can't get the right words, I apologize. But when I read this, I said, well, it's just another thing that Mr. Porter was talking about, that we're putting in the school, and they got enough of all this stuff going on around them. And because that's just my humble opinion. It's one of those political things that it's already there. It's there.
It's a feel-good bill.
Yes.
Dennis.
Maybe what is the L word, the lobbyist? Maybe there's some lobbyists that have called and they're pushing this for some reason. And
The American Heart Association.
I've had heart surgery, so stay out of that stuff.
Dennis.
I just want to say that from a medical standpoint, this is very cumbersome to have a long legislative thing that everybody's aware of. EMSs are available, and I just think we should leave. School nurses are aware of this stuff. They train. I would hope that CPR is training, part of routine training at the beginning of a school year. I just really resist this whole idea. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Anyone else? I agree with Danny and Dennis. Ann?
Well, the fact is we don't have defibrillators everywhere. If we did, the Heart Association wouldn't have bothered this, and if everybody had a cardiac emergency plan, we wouldn't be talking about this. So there really is a need out there to do more in schools. Whether or not this is the right approach is a whole other question, and what role KSDE should take in that is another question. So we have a lot of things to flesh out about this, but I've got a list of about a dozen concerns here that you guys brought up that I'll take back to the folks who originated the bill. We need to talk to Keisha, probably need to talk to our attorney. And then I just would like, I guess, some consensus that when we talk to all these folks and take your concerns into account, can Dina and I take that direction to provide some testimony next week? That. Yeah, that's what we're hearing is it would be next week, so that's a pretty short turnaround. And if we have, if we come up with some definite points, we'll be sure to send that out to all you guys. That makes sense? Yeah.
Sounds
Okay.
like there's consensus there, Ann, and I will
Thank
note
you.
that the someone from the Kansas Board of EMS had also kind of addressed this separately, directly with superintendents, so that might be another, I can follow up with you on that. Okay, any other committee reports? All right, we will move to the board attorney report. You're on a timer, Mark. We've got lunch.
I'm going to
with
defer.
students.
I have some things I want to talk about, but I think I'm going to visit with leadership and maybe bring you some more substantiated things to report on with regard to curriculum standards. The only thing I would throw out, since you didn't ask me for this, but when you're talking about this statute and the proposed statute in the legislative process, it seems like when you're setting standards, that could be that gives you flexibility to do things that you might want to do that may not otherwise be mandated in the statute. So, for example, when you set standards, it could include that you have Narcan in every school. After hearing yesterday's presentation, because it talks about cardiac emergency response plans. I'm just thinking outside the box that it's not just about defibrillators. If you're going to set some standards, if you think about what those standards are, they're subjects and areas of instruction that are informed by other professionals that make advice, and then the districts themselves have the authority to implement the curriculum that implements the standards. And just that's one way of using an example of the difference between curriculum, the authority of the local school board, and the establishment of standards at the state board level. I'd also point out that
Can you get closer to your mic?
I would also point out that the general powers of the state board in 72-255 talks about the State Board of Education shall adopt and maintain standards, criteria, guidelines, or rules and regulations for the following, and then goes through the various subparts that subcategories. But and when I say I want to bring back more substantiated legal authority for this, I would submit to you that standards are quite different than guidelines or even rules, regulations, or criteria. So I don't equate the standards with a guideline. I think they have legally significant differences, and I will bring that back to you next month. Thank you.
Thank you. Real quick, requests for future agenda items. Jim Porter.
We heard this morning about the national Spanish Creed speaker. I think it'd be nice to invite them to come talk to us. So it'd be a freshman at Uniontown High School. He was a national champion. I think that we've had precedent for that, and I request that we consider that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Betty.
Oh, Betty. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, it's a lot for me to juggle being on Zoom. So I was actually trying to articulate this request. It was something that was said this morning about, I didn't know how to become involved, that actually made me think that it would be nice to have some kind of presentation of outreach or things that guidelines that we might offer to helping kids connect to the established anchors that actually can be life-changing to them. I probably need a little help, Commissioner, in what I'm asking. I mean, we have the presenters that talk about these, but that little step of what is it that um, we encourage the systems to do to get kids involved or give them directions on how to become involved, because that's kind of a critical connection piece.
Thank you, Betty. I think we can take a look at that. We know that there's some strong research that students in middle school and high school that participate in 2 to 5 in or out of school. And when I say out of school, like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, with leadership and preferably one, do remarkably better in school and also do better out, you know, once they graduate. So I think we could have some people talk about, you know, how do we help kids find that, Betty, that whatever it is that they're interested in. Thank you.
And if I could add just one little caveat onto that, because most of the time we look at the involvement occurring in middle school and high school, and there's been I'm just wondering, even from um, elementary school level, if that's something that what steps are done to nurture that involvement or that anchor. And even that may be too young. I really don't know. But if we could add um, that particular focus in there as well, like when do we actually begin to help our kiddos develop that much needed anchor?
Thank you, Betty. Any other future agenda items? Anne?
I just want to remind about the SEL, the list of questions Ben had, I think, in his slide were a really good discussion starter to make sure, to have a discussion about what it is the state board is actually required and defines as SEL. So we're all on the same page about that.
Okay. Dina?
I have had some communication with individuals who, it seems like in one part of the state, there's a push to do 4-day school weeks, and the parents I've had some calls from parents wanting to know if we have data proving that that's a good thing, or what the positives and negatives might be. And I have heard about that from a business point of view, but I had not heard it so much from schools now, that it's when they had little money, some of them did that to save on electric bills and gas bills and so on a few years back. But I had not heard that, and evidently there's a school district or two that are considering doing that, and parents have concerns about how kids will carry that into their work life and say, well, I don't want to work 5 days out of the week. I want a 4-day week, and it can cause lots of issues. So if we could maybe talk about the positives and negatives, or hear about the positives and negatives of that issue, I think there are some parents out there that would appreciate having that information.
Dina, we've got the national research on that, and our research team is actually looking at Kansas research on that right now. And I was planning to, if that comes together, planning to report on that with you next week. I'll just give you the short version. my personal opinion, it's the wrong way to go. We've got a third of the kids struggling in reading. We're going to go to school less time. So I'll be happy to provide you the data on that. But it is something we were planning to bring to you.
And it seems like, and this was something I'd never heard in conjunction with with that 4-day week before, and they're saying that their district is saying that that's to retain teachers.
I'll address all that.
So you might connect that idea with it too.
Okay, thank you. Any others? You get those calls too. All right. I don't see any hands. We'll see you all next month.
Sure.
Wait. Well,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
but
and then,
here.
And then back here at 5:50, if we're going to go across, we got to go through security together. So we'll just meet in the lobby.
Before you do that,
Yeah.
I do need to add something that's not on travel for me, and that's the Acacia Board Executive Board meeting today and tomorrow. They were to be in person, but they're in Zoom, so.
We'll get you taken care of.
So,
all right.
Anyway.
We are adjourned.
Michelle, what do you